In this video, I'd like to look at how to display skeleton UI. This means that while the information is loading, we're going to be displaying a card on screen which should represent what the final card looks like, but it just has some dummy data. Let's see this in action. We'll make a new folder, and that will be called Components. Inside of Components, we can have a new folder called Loading Card. And within loading card, we can have a new file called loading-card.js, and finally a loading-card.css. So inside of loading card, we want to first import React from React. We also want to import /loading-card.css. That will of course be the styles for our card. And then Ionic gives us an Ion card element, which we can use by saying import from @Ionic/React. We want to import Ion card header, Ion card title, Ion card subtitle, and finally Ion skeleton text. We can then declare a new constant called loading card, and that will simply be a new function. We'll use the parentheses here because it's simply a functional component, and we'll export default loading card. So inside of our loading card function, we want to display an Ion card. Inside of the card, we'll have an Ion card header. We'll then have an Ion card subtitle, as well as an Ion card title. For now, we can simply just say hello and world. And once we save the file and add this into our app.js by heading over to app.js and importing from /components loading-card.js, we want to import loading card. We can then replace our code with that loading card. And at the moment, all we see is hello world. And that's expected if you wanted to show hello world in a card. We've already achieved that goal. But for us, what we want to do now is display some skeleton text. So back over to our loading-card.js, and inside of the subtitle, we want to display Ion skeleton text. Make sure you've got that imported. And we'll say animated. And we'll copy that and place that inside of the title as well. When we save the file, you should be able to see that now we have this animated skeleton text. We can then navigate to our loading-card.css, and we can make a loading-card_currency name. We'll set the width of that to 50 pixels, and we'll copy that. And this will simply be the currency value. This time we'll have the width of 150 pixels and the height of 30 pixels. Let's now go over to loading-card.js, and we'll put the card value with the class name into the Ion card title. We can then head to the subtitle and add the class name of loading card currency name. And once we save this, you should be able to see that the skeleton text has updated. You can see that it does have a smaller value here at the top and a larger value at the bottom. So the smaller value, i.e. the subtitle, that will reference USD, GBP, or Euros, and the larger portion of the cards, that will be the current value of Bitcoin. We can now navigate over to app.js once again, and inside of the render method, we can capture the loading value from state 2, and we'll be using the loading value to show these cards. So let's make a function called create loading cards, and that will simply just return an empty object like that. And inside of that, we want just to put 3 loading cards. Inside of Ion content, we can then say if we are loading, we'll ask the question, are we loading, using the ternary operator. If we are, we'll say this.create loading cards. If we aren't, we'll simply display nothing. So once we save the file, and if we refresh our page, you'll see for the first time at least, we have a very brief flash of our loading cards. Let's put set state, and inside of set state, we'll put loading equal to true, and that's inside of our component did mount. So our application will always be loading as a result. And here you can see that we now see these loading cards. Of course, there are more elegant ways to display our loading cards on screen. I just wanted an easy way to display it at this moment. So that's how we create skeleton user interface inside of Ionic and React. Next up, we'll be looking at showing Bitcoin prices inside of our app.